Have you ever wanted to take your beer or soda can that look like this and make it look like this? Today I'm going to share 3 methods for doing that. Welcome to the Upcycled Design Lab. If you're new here, my name's Cindy and I craft using recycled and repurposed materials to give you ideas on ways to make and create more economically and ecologically. So let me show you the 3 methods that I've used to remove the design from aluminum cans. For this first method, you'll need a Brillo pad, a cookie sheet, or a countertop that you don't care if you get it a little messy, and some water. And this method will take a fairly long time, so I don't recommend it for any projects that require a lot of sheets of metal. But if you just need a small piece of silver aluminum on both sides, you can use this method. It does take a lot of time and a lot of elbow grease, and it's a little bit messy. And you can probably see here that it does leave some scratches, so you're not going to get a perfectly shiny finish. The other thing about this method is that you do have to work on a flattened sheet of metal, or if you want a full can, you do need to take the print off before you open the can and remove the contents, because you do have to scrub pretty hard on the surface of the metal to remove the varnish and get down to the paint layer so that you can remove the paint. And if you have an empty can, you will end up crushing the can. So as I mentioned, this is not the best method by far, but if it's the only option you have and you only need a little piece of metal for your project, this will work in a pinch. The second method is the pressure cooker method, and I, until recently, had not tried this method. I assume that an Instapot might work for this particular method as well. If you've tried it, let me know in the comments. I don't know that much about pressure cookers or Instapots, but I'm just assuming that they kind of function the same way. So let me know if you've tried this method. It's definitely a faster way and a more, I'll just say more foolproof way to remove the print. As I'll show you in a minute, it's not completely foolproof. So for this method of removal, you do need the pressure cooker. You're going to need a stovetop. I recommend having a steamer rack, which I will talk about in a minute. You need some cotton pads or cotton balls and some fingernail polish remover. Okay, stop the presses because my second test turned out quite differently than my first test. So I was trying to remove the ink after boiling my cans for 20 minutes, and it didn't seem as easy as the first time. So I did end up putting them back in and cooking them, so to speak, for another 20 minutes. And I think that this is going to be a better experiment. You probably can't see this on camera, but you can feel sort of it's not rough, but it's just a little drier and less shiny finish when the pressure cooker has done its job. So I think these two are going to turn out okay. The flat sheets that I put in don't feel the same. I don't think that the print is going to come off of these sheets because I'm guessing because they were sitting in the pressure cooker like this, and so when the water would redeposit, it would sit on top of the ink. And I think somehow that just protects the finish, but we will give it a try. We'll see if the ink will come off, but it doesn't. I don't have high hopes, maybe in a couple spots. And then I think because they were stacked on top of each other, that's not a good way to do it either. These were sitting in a little bit of water, so I'm anticipating that this bottom portion of the print will not come off either, because I don't have a little rack to put in there to set them on top of. However, after the first time that I boiled these, this particular can all of the ink did come off, except for the black. You can see that the black is just a little more tricky to get off. And the other thing is that after putting this one back into the pressure cooker for the additional 20 minutes, this black doesn't seem like it's going to come off any easier. I will try to scrub on it a little bit. But the other thing is that you can see the spotting on here. I don't know what caused that, and I thought it would just wash off, but I don't believe that it's going to come off very easily with the fingernail polish remover or with soap and water. So it's kind of like it's stained the finish now. So I'm sort of starting to feel like this isn't completely foolproof, but let's see what happens. So I've used this little scrubby brush on here, and it does seem to be taking the black off without much effort, which is interesting. But it is kind of changing the finish on the can as well. There's a little bit of a, it's kind of pretty, but it's sort of a circular scratching finish rather than the shiny finish. I'm going to try the fingernail polish remover again on this black portion just to see what happens. But it's interesting, nothing, it's definitely not coming off with this. So I'm not sure if you can see that there's sort of a more scratched up surface. I mean, it's pretty, and it's actually a more uniform surface maybe than the shinier portion of the can. But it's obviously a little messy, and I need to work on it a little bit more to finish it off, but that's sort of an unexpected result. So next I'm going to try one of my cans that was just standing in the water like this, or standing in the pan like this. So there was water, I'm not sure if you can see, but there's sort of a water line, a shinier portion right here. So my expectation is that it won't come off the bottom. However, I was surprised by that other can. So it might just depend on the brand and the print, you know, the type of ink that they're using. I don't know. This is interesting because the black is coming right off with the orange, and you can see that this is much easier than when I was trying to scrub on the black portion of that other can. So I think this is the result that you expect, or this is the result that I expected for sure. But you can see down here, I'm scrubbing pretty hard. It is coming off a little bit, but not nearly as easy as this portion that was not sitting in the water. So I would say that if you are having difficulty removing the ink, that, you know, if you're having to scrub too hard, you probably just need to put your cans back in and cook them under the pressure a little bit longer. And even though this ink in some cases is coming off at the bottom, I do think that it's the best practice, if you're going to do much of this, to have some kind of rack that you can set them up on, because I think when the water is sitting on the cans, that somehow that just protects, or the cans are sitting in the water, that somehow that just protects the finish, the varnish that's on there or something, so that you can't really get the print off as easily. So that was kind of more what I expected for the results from the first time around. I'm going to have to work a little harder on this edge here, but this is the result that I expected, certainly. I'm going to try to do one of my flat pieces now, and like I said, I don't anticipate that it's going to come off very easily, but I could be wrong. Nope, I can tell I'm just sliding around on that varnish. So yeah, you definitely don't want your water sitting on the varnish, because somehow it just protects it from the pressure, and the pressure must be what degrades the varnish that's on top of the print. So if you were going to use flattened cans, you would want to make sure that somehow they were standing up out of the water inside the pressure cooker and not laying flat where the water can recondense on there. I'll quickly try these other two, but they are definitely not reacting the same way. All right, now for the cans. I'm expecting them to work. Now, like I said, the first time around, they did not, I mean, they worked a little bit. You can see where I was able to get a little bit of the ink off, but it was just a lot harder to scrub it off. And so whoops. No, this doesn't seem to want to play either. I thought this would be a lot easier. I mean, it is coming off, but certainly if you have a whole can that you're trying to remove the print from, you don't want to have to push too hard on it. Otherwise, you'll crush the can. So again, I don't know if this was because they were laying down and the water kind of condensed and dropped onto the cans. Because certainly the best results are happening with the cans that were just standing straight up and down. So this one, again, I was able to get some of the ink off the first time around, but it just was more difficult than I expected it to be. And it could be that it's just a different kind of print, because this is not coming off as easily as the other flattened piece that I did, but it is coming off. And certainly more fingernail polish works faster, that's for sure. So maybe that was my problem. I just didn't quite have it saturated enough. But you can see that it's not coming off the bottom again. So I can only assume that that's because of the water that it's sitting in. Although the pink seems to be coming off a little bit. So I think it's kind of a combination of things that make it work. All right, I'm very curious about this one just because the first time I did it, the black part of the Voodoo Ranger did not come off at all. And the green was quite easy to remove, so I'm expecting it to be... Let's see, it's coming right off this time. So, I think in general terms, kind of in summary, I would say that the black portion, like this, is definitely harder to get off. So the black sections can be more difficult, but if you add some cooking time or a little bit more elbow grease, you can get them off. I do think that the cans and the brand have some impact on how that works. And there is something about the water sitting on the can and protecting it that you want to avoid if you want the ink to come off easily. I do not have all the answers, but this has been an interesting experiment. Let's try one more thing just for fun. Oh, look at that. I suspect that the reason that this scrubby part works, but it does scratch up the surface a little bit, is because it's just breaking down that varnish a little bit. You know, it's able to break down the varnish that's left on there. So that's in the for what it's worth department. I don't know if that shows up on camera, but definitely when you use even just this little scrubby pad, it does put some texture into the metal. I actually think it's kind of pretty though. So those are my results. If you've ever tried this, let me know if you think I'm doing something wrong. I wouldn't recommend trying to do the full cans. If you do, you might want to make sure that you're standing them up so that the water drips off of them and doesn't settle on the finish at all. And you can use this. Oh, see, this is working better. I don't know. Crazy results I'm getting. This is working much better than the fingernail polish remover. So I don't know, maybe this is sort of a 2.0 way to remove the finish. I guess now I have to try it on this flattened sheets. I don't think that's going to work though, because it just doesn't. It's coming off a little bit, but it's more work than you want to be putting in if you're removing the ink this way, I think. So I definitely don't think you want your pieces in there where they're going to pick up or catch the water as the condensation is happening in the pressure cooker. I kind of like this though. Just to tell you how much of a nerd I am, I actually have watched several videos on how cans are made. So I know that the process that they go through, they kind of get stretched into this shape from a disc. But the other thing that happens is that the inside and the outside of the can both have a varnish coat on them, and I'm assuming that that's what the pressure cooker kind of gets through. So the print goes on to the can, and then there's a spray varnish that goes on as well, and that's the varnish, I'm assuming, is what makes the print so difficult to remove. And I don't know why, but the pressure cooker does break that varnish down somehow. And so once that's done, you can remove it with fingernail polish remover, or, you know, if you don't have fingernail polish remover and you don't mind a little scratched surface, you can use a little scrubby pad. The last method, which is my preferred method, because I don't usually need a lot of cans without any print. Most of my projects I either paint over the print or I use the print in my design. But I do have one specific project that I make where I do want the aluminum to be silver on both sides, and that's for my beaded aluminum can dragonflies. So for this method, you don't need any extra supplies to get the print off, but you do need to find specific cans that have shrink sleeves on them instead of printing. And if you're able to find these types of cans, you can see how easy it is to get the plastic shrink wrap off, and you're left with a very shiny can. Now this method does have a couple of drawbacks. Obviously you have to find the cans, and you also have to want to drink what's inside the cans. So that can be a little bit of a challenge. But if you are looking specifically for cans with shrink sleeves on them, a couple of recommendations of places to look would be at microbreweries that run small batches and sell their beer in cans. That's where I've found most of the shrink wrapped cans that I have. So if you keep an eye out, you may be able to find a beverage that you like and also use the cans because they have the shrink wrap finish on them. And it's definitely the fastest and cleanest method for removing the print from the cans. It can be a little tricky to figure out which cans have sleeves and which ones are printed when they're in a six-pack and you're just looking at them. But a couple of clues here are 2 of these cans have sleeves and 2 of these cans are printed. And just by looking at the side here, you might be able to tell. Obviously people know that Coke cans are printed, but if you look at this second can here, you can see that the color doesn't go quite all the way to the rim. And then this can is also a printed can, and you can see that it goes all the way to the top. This can also has a plastic sleeve on it, and you can see just a little hint of the silver where it doesn't quite go up to the rim. The other thing that will help you determine whether or not there's a sleeve or print on the can is that you can see on these 2 cans with the shrink wrap sleeves on them, the shrink wrap is coming around the end of the can a little bit more, and you can kind of see the edge of the shrink wrap in some cases, but you can see on the 2 printed cans that the print and the ink are just coming down to where the can starts to curve. So that's just another way to kind of tell whether there's a shrink wrap sleeve or print on the can. I didn't consider this to be an additional method. I'm kind of calling it method 3.5, not 4. because some bars, and you might be able to find them in liquor stores as well, or even in your grocery store, have cans that have sticker type labels on them. And you'll find them a lot of times. They'll be in oversized cans and they'll have that sticker label on them. So you just have to soak them and scrub the label off instead of being able to just peel it off like the shrink wrap can. So those are the 3 methods that I know of to remove the print from a beer or soda can. I will just quickly mention that I tried using my heat gun, which was not effective. I tried an open flame, which did not work. And I also tried some paint stripper. And all 3 of those, I would say, are not effective ways of removing the print from an aluminum can. So I hope you found that information helpful. If you have any ideas on ways to remove the ink from cans, or you know of any methods that have worked for you, let me know in the comments. If you'd like to check out my dragonfly tutorial or some other aluminum can projects, you can click one of the links below. Also, I'll put some additional resources in the description box. There's a place to sign up to receive the Upcycled Design Lab newsletter if you'd like to never miss one of my projects. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you back here soon in the lab for my next experiment.